Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Tracks and Noise podcast. We hope you all had a great weekend. It was not a great weekend for Town fans all in all on the pitch, that is for sure, though, because Town did lose on Friday night 2-1 away to Oxford. We'll be looking back at that game from this past weekend, and also just looking ahead and just various discussion points coming out of this weekend's fixture after a run of 6 games without a loss came to an end. To look back on Town's defeat at Oxford, I'm once again joined by Mr. Richard Popple. How are you doing, Richard?
Very good, Tom. Yeah, very good. Looking forward to discussing the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed a bit of a clean shave from you every game. Obviously, Paul was off town, but clean slate for you.
It wasn't for the game, but it's quite rare for me, to be honest. So
I know,
feel a bit weird.
It stuck out to me. I mean, this thing here isn't from November. It's been here for about 4 years now. By the way, for listeners, I'm talking about my moustache.
Like Dara O'Shea and Leif Davis.
Yeah, well, my old man texted me before the game on Friday saying, I'm loving O'Shea's tash. And I was like, we'll say goodbye to after this game, because unless he may stick around, who knows, for Coventry. But you know, you can already tell that this game did not go away, because they're talking about if a mustache is going to stick around for the next game rather than what we saw on the pitch. But we will get into what we saw on the pitch, whether we like it or not. But as I said, yeah, Town's run of 6 games without a loss did unfortunately come to an end away at Oxford. You know, going into this game, Richard, for me, obviously away's been really good these past few weeks. So you'd like to, and especially after the whole game, despite the fact we weren't great from start to finish, we very much found our feet in the last half hour. So you kind of felt that might have been a bit of momentum going into a game against a side, unlike Hull, who weren't having that good of a season, was sitting near the bottom of the league. But obviously those sort of games can be a banana skin. They very much go with a different game plan when one of the top sides comes to their home turf. And Oxford did kind of play a perfect match from their perspective, didn't they? But yeah, 2-1, you know, obviously you'd like to win as many games as you can or not drop as many points as possible. But, you know, you're not going to, you are going to lose a game eventually. And after 6 games, it did happen.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. I mean, we've already lost 4 this year. And I think in the promotion championship winning season, we lost 6 all year. So, you know, we've used up a few already. But Oxford are a bit of a bogey side of ours, aren't they? We've never ever won there, which is a mad anomaly. You know, even in the League One years, it was a difficult place for us to go. We lost in the fog the last time we were there a couple of years ago, whenever it was, 3 years ago. It was a weird game, really. I think there were parts of it that we looked really good. For about 20 minutes in the second half, we looked really, really good. And it's actually some of the best I think we've looked all year for a period of time. But surrounding that was just more of the same, really, more of the inconsistencies that we've kind of seen throughout the season. Individual mistakes and collectively just not really being able to respond when your backs are against the wall. When a side kind of mixes up their tactics, we just don't really seem to respond until it's too late.
We'll get into the game as we go on here, but what are those inconsistencies, would you say? Obviously, there's been, I can think of a fair few, I'm sure everyone listening can as well, but just one of those or a couple of those that stood out to you on Friday?
Well, I mean, I think selection has been an inconsistent, well, it's been consistently inconsistent, but that has been talked about a lot. I don't know whether I think it's a problem or not, really, but I certainly think elements of it don't help. I'm not sure why you need to change your centre halves every game. It doesn't really make much sense to me, to be honest. And you know, he's been doing that kind of routinely, and obviously we've been on a 6-game unbeaten run, so you could say, well, it kind of works or whatever, but it just seems a really weird thing to do. I mean, you know, we played on Tuesday night. It was a Friday night. Of course, there were going to be changes to the team. There have to be. You totally get that. But I think stuff like that just is not helpful, really. We're not good enough defensively to do that. And the players aren't good enough individually, I don't think, to do that. So I think there's that. And I think also it's just this... We really do have an inability to kind of react in games. I don't know why, you know, I know McKenna always makes subs around the kind of sort of 60-minute mark or whatever, 60 to 70-minute mark. But we were completely on top at that point when he made those first subs, and it changed the game in the wrong direction completely. And it's not to throw the people that came on under the bus necessarily, but the Oxford players who came on made a massive difference. They changed their tactics. They went for us because they could sense a sort of a weakness with our ability to cope with kind of like long balls, to cope with direct football. when it becomes chaotic, we don't seem to be able to sort of instinctively adapt. I don't think.
Yeah, I think, as you said, there've been various mistakes for season that are kind of like, as you said, unfortunately consistent. I think looking at Oxford's winner, which we'll get on later on, that was so reminiscent of so many goals this season. Of quite rightly, sides are going to be playing the counter against us a lot, which did lead to the winner. And as you said, their side, I think it was Lancashire came on to score the winner. But yeah, with lineups, just sticking to that before we get into the game here, like I'm not necessarily, because a lot of people might listen to this and watch this might disagree with me, and I think given what you said, Richard, disagree with you as well. But people saying how Philogene, we didn't win that game. Philogene scored against Watford, and he was dropped the next game, and Nunes got a double against QPR, and didn't start the game against Watford either, and then Clark got a goal against Swansea, didn't start. Obviously, it was international break after, but didn't start against Wrexham. But a lot of those games, it's like 3 or 4 days in between. Like, I know obviously you would like, I think everyone would like to, your best players to start every single match. But the way this league is set up, there's going to be changes. I agree. Maybe across the back line, we shouldn't necessarily switch that. I don't think we switch it dramatically each game. But obviously, those pairings it doesn't help changing those each time, and you don't really know where you stand. But I don't necessarily think the changes that have been made have been all that drastic and too much of a spanner in the works for the most part. Anyway, because if Clark or Philogene start, I'm happy with that. To be honest, they both had a decent season for the most part. I know obviously going forward we have a lot to improve upon, but either of those starting on a pitch, yes, it's a shame neither of those can play together. But when one of those is on, I'm not sort of like down the dumps about it, so to speak, because I think it's still a good player to hopefully do something for the side. But it's difficult. I get why people are annoyed to not have someone who's scored the week before to start. It is a strange one, but yeah, I don't know. It just. I don't think it's necessarily the biggest issue is those changes, because we have quality, and there's been certain games when that quality has shone through, regardless if they're starting or not.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't think who starts and who doesn't necessarily dictates the result. Really, I think the issue that people have with it is what you've kind of just mentioned, is the fact that a player can go from having one of their better games of the season, Nunes, for example, at QPR, and then he's not in the side for the next game. Now, obviously, we're not privy to whether they are fit enough for the next game, quote unquote. But if they're coming on at some point, then it suggests that they potentially are, because that McKenna is always going to make 5 changes, and there's always going to be 5 outfield players who aren't going to play 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So 10 outfield players that aren't going to play 90 minutes. I think though the issue is that they're very data driven. I mean, a lot of clubs are, obviously, but I think you still see some managers who maybe go the other way, where they they're very instinctive around substitutions or not. They're nowhere near as prescriptive as maybe McKenna is. And I think the data drives the kind of decision making about whether players are delivering the numbers and stuff that are deemed maybe fit enough to execute the game plan or whatever. And so there does seem to be this slightly robotic decision making around some of it, rather than a feel for it. And I think that lack of feel is reflected in that stat that I saw last night, where we have not come from behind to win a game in, I think, 31 games now in the league or something like that. I think it's 20. If we've gone behind, or maybe we've gone behind at halftime or something, it's lost 24 now, drawn 7. We don't respond. We don't respond in games, whether that's Premier League and now several games into the Championship this year and the year before. And that kind of does say something. So I think it's not necessarily about who's starting and who's not, but it's more to do with, we have a game plan that doesn't seem to be flexible. And I think the decision making around who's starting or not is kind of built into that game plan a bit, and all of the data that they kind of use to make those decisions. And it just doesn't really feel like the feel of either the management at the side or the players on the pitch. Their game management, their game feel doesn't seem on point at the moment.
Yeah, there is an aspect of it, and I don't obviously think it's the case at all, but where you feel like, because the amount of players we have, and quote unquote they're decent quality enough, where you kind of got, maybe to an extent, keep some people happy and give them a starter now. Maybe not, but
players want to play, don't they? So yeah, you've got to factor that in. But yeah, it's all part of it.
Yeah, guys, it's been such a debate all season, though. So it's obviously, I think it is certainly a factor. But looking at the game, as we said, I think Oxford, despite the fact playing at home, you go into this game from their perspective. Obviously, you want to win all the time, and they did. But I'm pretty sure if they got a point coming out of this game, that would have been a good one for them, considering sort of where we were the last few games, and obviously them sort of scraping a draw at Carrow Road the few days prior. But the way they set up was kind of, sort of playing for that point. I felt for the most part of some kind of absorbing pressure, but then they did very much take the lead early on. I think about 24-minute mark, and then they were going to sit back even more, which is what we saw really for the most part. It was, the goal in itself. Let's just get into that because it was a bit of a crazy, jammy one to concede. I mean,
the first goal?
Yeah, from
right.
I think just obviously, the second one I think was good quality. But
It's good, yeah.
Yeah, but the first goal we conceded, it was an error from Matisse, where unfortunately at the start, and he's been getting a lot of praise this past week for his brilliant performance at whole. And I very much, as Rob has said as well, when he's not in the team, obviously with the exception of this game, our last loss was when he wasn't in the side, and that was against Charlton quite dramatically, and he is such a difference maker. And yeah, just unfortunately for him, one of the rare mistakes he does make, and it did cost us, didn't it? With I think a deflection off the keeper and then back in the net from the Fox's player, wasn't it?
Yeah, it obviously was him giving the ball away, and everyone's saying it's Matisse' mistake. I don't think Christian Walton covers himself in glory. He basically, it's an all right save. It's a save you should make. It's not that far away from him, and he pushes the ball literally back into the danger zone. And he's done this before. Like, this is something he kind of does a little bit. And I'm not saying it's his fault, but I think he could save that and push the ball away. And if he'd had his time again, I'm sure he tried to do that. Town's defence don't react particularly quickly to it either. But yeah, Matisse gives the ball away in the same way that players in that position do. This has been talked about a lot. The way that deep line midfielders have to pick the ball up off the back four or the goalkeeper or whatever, they're in that vulnerable position. If a team's good at pressing and has got the energy and the application and the sort of desire to try and win the ball, they're going to cause you problems. And Oxford, I disagree with what you said. I don't think Oxford played for a point at all. I think that when they made the subs and when they kind of like went for it in the last half an hour, we were all over the place. There was only one team that was going to win that game, and we went from literally controlling it when we got the equaliser and looking like we were going to score again to conceding the control completely. And Oxford just took it on in a really direct manner, and they caused us all sorts of problems. So I would suggest that they were the ones that went for the win more than we did.
Yeah,
really.
I was thinking maybe like their intentions coming into the game. Perhaps I think obviously after getting a goal early on and seeing that they can, despite albeit kind of bonkers circumstances, and the fact that we are a team to be able to be got at. Maybe
I don't think we're a team to be feared at all. I think we are a team to be got at. Like if you look at our away performances in terms of like balls over the top, or down the channels or whatever, anything direct essentially, it causes us issues. Even in the games that we've won, it's caused us issues. So sometimes we've won games, obviously, and a few times we absolutely haven't. I don't think if you're a home side, I don't think you fear Town coming to Town really.
No.
We definitely have weaknesses, and Oxford exploited them really well.
Yeah, very much so. Before we go to the break, just looking at some chances we had in the first half, not necessarily specific moments, but only specific players. Like Egley had a few chances early on before Oxford's opener.
Yep.
Where are you at with him? Obviously, I think he's the only attacking player. Obviously, he's got an assist now. I think he's the only attacking player not to found the back of a net. I mean, not that many have sort of got them in abundance this season. Obviously, Akpom and Azon have only got one of each. And we've sung his praise a lot, and he's obviously a young player. I think there's been sparklings and showings of brilliance this season. I'm very much not lost faith in him, but he's one of the few players who start to get a bit of flack online, but just due to him not finding the back of the net. And you stick with him regardless, though, right? I mean, it seems like a given.
Well, which player isn't getting flack online?
You tell me.
I don't know. Right. I mean, I've just given Christian Walton a bit of flack, and I don't think he was getting it from other people. So I don't think anyone's safe. Maybe my favourite Dara O'Shea, who's undroppable.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a weird one. I think he completely drifts in and out of games. Obviously, a goal would help his confidence and all the rest of it. But we've kind of seen with Azon and Akpom, even though I know Akpom only scored in the last game and stuff, but they're not tearing the league up, are they, or anything like that? in the reality is that I don't think he's kind of adapting maybe as quickly as they might have hoped, but that's always going to happen, isn't it? There's always a possibility that players coming in from different leagues don't adapt very quickly. I think particularly coming from like a league that's not renowned as a particularly strong one, it might be harder for him. I think he's a bit predictable, and I think players kind of work him out. Maybe during a game, fullbacks tend to work him out because he's not like electric. So he's not like going around the outside of people. Ipswich's wingers don't seem to be told to do that anyway, because they always cut inside, which is a bit the modern way. I think he's better suited in the 10 role, but whether he's kind of ready for that is another matter. But I think he's doing okay. It's kind of 6 out of 10 stuff, isn't it, most weeks? But that's kind of what you're getting with most of our players, really, and that's why we are where we are.
Yeah. With him as well. I think it's just he is getting, I think, maybe the least amount of flack in terms of attacking players, just due to potentially, like you said, his experience and all that sort of stuff. And with obviously liking his stats to McAteer, he's only got one more assist than him. Maybe they've got equal stats to that extent.
Yeah, but the eye test tells you something different, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But like on paper, they have kind of had similar seasons, but there's a lot more to one of the other's game than the other so far, at least what we've seen. So I think that's why he's probably not getting as much flack, because there's been sparklings in efforts, and I think enough evidence to show that he is very much going to be a player we hope he can be. We'll take our first break, and we come back. We'll look back at the rest of the second half. Also look back at some of the other results in the league this week and how that affected Town, and a slight preview ahead to Town's rescheduled game against Blackburn, which is happening this Tuesday. So I'll see you guys in a sec. Welcome back to part 2 of Tracked Noise. Myself and Richard looking back on Town's 2-1 defeat at Oxford United this past Friday. Obviously, opening the half, Richard, we want to kind of have an instant response, and we did, for the most part, within 7 minutes of the second half beginning. A corner from Nunez, and then Leif Davis just on the edge of the inside of the box, shall we say. A fantastic volley. Obviously, the result's going to overshadow this goal, unfortunately, but a really, really well-taken finish from a player who, not everyone's having the best season, and he's maybe not shone as much as he has a couple of years ago, but a really, really well-taken goal from him, and did for a brief moment look like we could potentially come back from a win, which, as you said, we have not managed to do for quite a long time.
No, it's a great goal, wasn't it? Yeah, good ball, drops perfectly for him, really, but really hard technique to kind of keep that down and control it. But yeah, very, very nicely done, and pleased for him, because you're right, he's not had maybe the easiest season. Signed a new contract though recently and celebrates it with a goal. So yeah, it was good, and you're right. At that point, it looked like there was only one winner. Really, we were completely dominant, completely all over them. We were playing well. We were moving the ball quicker than we were in the first half. McKenna clearly said some things at half time. I don't know what he says at half time. What do you reckon? Is he a kind of? He doesn't strike me as a sort of anger guy, but
hairdryer treatment kind of manager. No. Yeah, I don't know. You can't imagine, like, it's got to be a few bits of effort and Jeffin in there, surely. Like, he doesn't seem that sort of bloke who would, but it's when the heat of the moment gets to you.
I think Martin Pert would be the guy to do that a bit more. You kind of see him often geeing them up on the sideline, and then McKenna sort of remembers that he has to do that as well, and he kind of he follows Pert's example.
Yeah, it's very much like, especially, managers and players, managers even more, I guess, because everyone's so media trained to an extent, and even on the touchline, they obviously have to keep their sort of temperament back a bit to an extent. But obviously, I imagine in the changing rooms when the cameras are sort of away, so to speak, just I feel like it'd be, you have like sort of an expectation of as maybe a famous person you sort of look up to, and then you meet them in real life and they're not who you think they are. Obviously, I can't imagine McKenna would ever be that, but imagine like him behind closed doors in the changing room compared to what he's like in front of the media would be very different, and for good reason, I think. But it's an intimate moment where he can kind of get his word across, isn't it? But yeah. As you said, though, Town were for the most part all over Oxford then, and as you said at the top of the show, the subs from Oxford did kind of change the game. The game plan kind of changed from there. One of the subs who did make an impact was I might butcher his name. Is it Plaqueta? I apologise.
He scored the winner, yeah.
Yeah, he scored the winner only 15 minutes or so later. We'll get into that now, actually, to be honest, because let's talk about this again better. But really, really well taken goal. A long ball from the back from Oxford, and then just over. I think it was over Jack Taylor, who tried to sort of chase back and defend it, but really well taken goal and good dribbling, but ahead of it, and then just past Walton's left side, wasn't it? And Oxford
Yeah, I
took the
mean,
lead, and you kind of really didn't see a way back, despite the fact there's that long left. Just chances kind of seemed so few and far between, despite the fact we seem to create the most in the league, more than Coventry.
is that right?
Yeah, I saw one the other day. It's only one more. I think it's 53 sort of chances created, and they've buried a lot more. It could be a
God,
different number,
wow,
but
that is depressing.
we're up there, that's for sure. And
Yeah,
compared to them, we're not in the up there in the same capacity.
yeah, their winner, not Jack Taylor's finest moment. You know, it was. I mean, he basically pinged a ball, a stupid ball into the box towards Nunes, who's not very big, and the Oxford defenders were quite big. So it was an easy kind of header for them to win, and then it was their midfield did the same from Taylor's position, pinged it over his head, and yeah, the guy he finished it really well. Actually, it was a good finish, but the build up to that, the kind of like previous 5 or 10 minutes, they'd started to do it. They started to ping balls in behind, and just made the game chaotic in the same way that Middlesbrough did. It was that kind of like, it reminded me of that game quite a lot.
Yeah, same. It did as well.
And there's a couple of others where I can't remember, even the Blackburn game, obviously, that got it's being replayed next week and stuff, where these long straight balls, or even slightly diagonal balls or whatever, over one of the centre halves that get pulled apart because they've been passing it around at the back, and one of them's closer to the touchline and all the rest of it, so they're out of position, and it's just easy. There's just so much space, and because we don't have a keeper that's particularly a sweeper keeper, not that you necessarily should be, but we don't. That line of defence, the gap between the defence and the keeper in those moments just seems massive. So yeah, it looked all a bit scrappy, as we have on several occasions, and you kind of thought, oh, okay, we've had a couple of clean sheets in a row. Here we go, we're going to start to look a little bit solid again. But really, all it took was cranking up the intensity a little bit, which is what Oxford did with their subs, making the game a little bit chaotic, which is what the Championship is, and then getting physical and chucking those long balls in, and we just didn't deal with it. We just can't. We don't seem to be able to deal with it. We don't have the players, the personality in those players to be able to kind of grab the game by the scruff of the neck again, and it's a worry.
Yeah, obviously not to diminish and nullify 6 games without a loss, because I think that's a hard thing to do in this league, as we've seen. But a lot of those clean sheets in those games, like, you could argue those teams really didn't have that intensity that Oxford had in this game. Like, Wrexham barely had a sniff, Hull in their own ground, apart from a shot that sort of scraped the post. Again, the same, and West Brom really didn't offer that much as well.
Yeah,
goes without saying, the sides who offered the opposite of that, like Oxford did, and I think Derby were a side who played with a game plan similar to that and got a decent result at our pace early in the season. You're going to get something from our team. Our players can't seem to defend against those, and they're all such similar goals. I think a lot of the games we dropped points in this season, with the exception maybe like a Borough. Well, he said the game was quite similar, but sides you might think we could go into potentially losing because they've had a decent season. Obviously, no disrespect to Oxford, but I don't think many of us went into this game thinking we were going to come out with 0 points. But those sort of games, we've had so many similar ones this season where the way we've conceded and the way we've sort of felt about the team afterwards, this echoes so much to many other results this season. It's just a shame the way in which we're dropping points. It seems to be a repetitive way, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it does. But I think all of this stuff around, we create loads of chances and all the rest of it, and opposition score off very few chances against us. I think it's not actually looking at the problem really, and it's not accepting the fact, maybe not accepting the reality that I don't think we're quite as good as we think we are. I personally never thought we were. I said we'd finish 5th, and I think we'll probably finish about 5th. Which on the face of it would be a decent season, right? But with the expectation the way it was, with the league not really being that good a quality, if you think that even after this pretty indifferent, first 17 games of the season, we've only won 7 out of 17 games. So we've 10 games we've dropped points. It's quite a lot, really, for a club with the expectations and the money that we spent. And you think with Stoke and Coventry to come twice in the next month, there might be a few more drop points in that time as well. Not to mention going back to Blackburn,
Millwall on Boxing Day as well.
Millwall Boxing Day, yeah. I think there's been a bit of humbling about how good we actually are as players, and there's a few things involved with that. A lot of people want to put it on McKenna's plate and McKenna's door, and some of that might be right, but they don't seem to fight for each other in the same way that past town sides have, maybe in recent memory and stuff. There doesn't seem to be that togetherness where they can galvanise themselves in the middle of a game when it's not down to the manager to galvanise them. It's down to you to grab yourself on the pitch and turn it around. They don't seem to do it. And if that continues to happen, then I think the results will continue to sort of fluctuate, really.
Yeah. Is there not I don't know if I necessarily agree to this, but is there maybe because of those old teams, we might be sort of, then again, they've earned it to an extent, but romanticising the past and not being aware of what you have in the present. But I guess when the method of performances or maybe the enthusiasm of performance doesn't look to be there in comparison to previous squads, I guess that's why the criticism's coming, isn't it?
I think so. I think the performances are the thing that is kind of frustrating people. It seems more than the results. I mean, the results are annoying, but look at it. We're still only 6 points off second place. It's not a disaster, is it?
Yeah.
So it's the performances, and they don't seem to really improve with any sort of consistency. Even in a game, how can you kind of go from that sort of 15 to 20 minute period where you're playing really, really, and all right, the opposition definitely deserve credit, but the inability to just like get back into that, and it's not just that game; it's happened throughout the season. They don't seem to be able to do it. The lack of leadership and all that sort of stuff that's talked about. Maybe that's true. I don't know, but there certainly doesn't seem to be a sort of shared adaptability. I don't think to situations. It gets chaotic, and they don't seem to think. They don't seem to kind of just breathe and stop and go again, or even match that chaos with their own. They I don't think they're sort of told to do that, really, because McKenna's play is obviously very structured. But that structure is not winning out really at the moment.
No. Before we wrap up our look back on this game, mentioned earlier about the subs on our end didn't really have much of an impact. Just anyone you want to highlight? They're not to single out people in a bad way, but
I mean, Ashley Young looks my age, and he is my age, so he. I don't know what you say. I mean, a lot of people said he should be in the team, but the right back situation's kind of sums up some of the recruitment. It's mad. We've bought so many right backs and we don't have a good right back. People say Furlong's all right. He's all right. He's fine.
Yeah,
but he's not particularly better than Harry Clark, is he?
In terms of what he offers and his style of play, I'd say it's relatively similar. Long throws and lofted balls over the top. It's kind of a similar aspect, perhaps. But I don't know. I think he's one of the few signings he's kind of slotted in fairly well to an extent this season. But yeah.
I think he's all right. I don't think he offers very much going forward.
But is that we've never really had that of a right back though? Because you got Davis on the left to do it. You kind of sort of become an inverted back three to an extent, don't you? When that happens,
well, you do, but then you need to be a better defender than he is, and I don't. Don't you?
Yeah. That's a good caveat. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so we were talking about subs. Young looks what he is a footballer coming to the end. Yeah, and the others. I mean, Jack Clark looked a bit like the other indifferent Jack Clark performances of yesteryear, where he just kind of runs into people, really hangs on to the ball for too long. But you could accuse Philogene of doing that in this game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Azon, can we talk about the strikers?
Yeah, sure. Well, people are asking. Well, we'll talk about these ones then. Moving forward,
so Azon missed a really good chance. No, I mean people have sort of mentioned it, but he basically should have scored.
Agreed.
And yeah, he doesn't convince, does he?
No, I think of him. No, it's a game by game basis, I guess, if you like a striker or not. But obviously, it's one of those things where you thought the goal against Swansea might moving forward. It's only been a few games afterwards. Maybe it will, but. There's been moments of his movement being quite good. I think, obviously, the build-up to the third goal against Norwich was a good example of that. But, they're looking all over the place. It may not be a good litmus test of how good of a striker he is, of course. But it is a bit of a ghost in games, and not a way you want, really. Obviously, you can't want a striker to maybe play that way if they're going to sort of ghost behind a defender and have a through ball played to them. But we don't have many players to do a through ball for the most part. And, yeah, just most of the time when he's in that position, there's not that sort of expectation of, and this player's obviously better than him, but of a Liam Delap who, might be in front of goal and you think, yeah, he's going to at least, you have a decent amount of confidence that this is going to go in the back of the net. But with him, I don't know, he came on the 84th minute and despite the fact it's a striker and we're a goal down, didn't really fill you much confidence, did it? It's kind of a testament to where he's at as a player and where a lot of the subs are at, to be honest, because McAteer came on at the same time as him and I felt the same way.
I don't think he came on against Hull, did he? As on?
No.
And it felt like I don't think he was in the plan. He was in plans to come on in this game either.
No, because Akpom came on around the 70th for Hirst, which is usually what the Azon role was reserved for. But I feel like we're now seeing Akpom occupy that.
Yeah, which kind of says that he's sort of slipping down the pecking order a little bit. Yeah, he didn't cover himself in glory. The player I do want to talk about is George Hirst.
Yeah.
Can you give me your thoughts about George Hirst's season so far? It's what I do.
It's what you do. I'm looking at our season predictions on the first episode of Track to Noise. If you were here for that, then thank you very much. But best player for Town this year, and obviously James at the time had Amari Hutchinson, which at the time was, I think, even before he was still in the books at that point. But I thought,
is he playing for Sean Dyche's Nottingham Forest, or is he still on the bench?
Pay much attention to him. I know he played. I think he came off the bench against Liverpool and when at Anfield last week, and he almost scored, which is quite cool. But yeah, James Hutchinson. I had Jack Clark, which consider how the season's gone. It maybe it's not a drastic shout. But then yourself and Rob, not to throw under the bus here. Yourself and Rob did have George Hirst. I'm not saying like, what are you doing? Because at the time I was very much, like with Delap now gone.
Yeah, that was the rationale.
This was his time. And I feel many fans have that perspective. Maybe still do have that perspective on him as a player. But yeah, it's similar to Azon, but it's just a bit more upsetting, really, where he gets on the ball and nothing really that exciting seems to happen. His hold-up play is, I think, gone down a level. His dribbling is there's a lack of confidence when he's moving forward on the ball. Very wayward runs into the box and it's just kind of bundled sort of calamities in front of a goalkeeper and sort of a trickling effort or thereabouts, but nothing that substantial to really shout home about. I can't really think of many chances he's had this season where you thought, obviously, I think there's a few you think he should have scored, but he's taken them so poorly that it was never going to be a chance to score anyway. I think we were 2-1 up against Norwich at home in the opening of the second half. There was a really good chance in, and he just
he did. Yeah,
there's been a lot of chances like that this season, but yeah, I think he's really the player in terms of performances. We've talked a lot about on today's show about performances. Individually, I think he's been one of the, I don't want to say worst, is such a big word to say, but it's just been underwhelming.
It's not been good. It's not been good at all.
Considering the opportunity he's got this season, because obviously even when we went up this few seasons, obviously started, in the last stages in the championship season, but, he wasn't like the main guy of that season because everyone was contributing goals, including him, of course. But this season and the way the team's set up, you thought it would have been his chance to be the guy, and it's just not happened.
Definitely. And also, he's fit. He's not had injury problems.
That was on your prediction document. You said Hirst if he's fit.
I know. And you look at his actual record. I think he's got 5 in 15. I think he might have missed a couple of games, something like that, or 5 in 16. So he's 1 in 3. Which I mean, I'm not sure if Hirst is a better striker than that anyway in terms of like goal ratio. But I think my rationale was all of those things. Delap's not there anymore. You've just signed a new contract where you probably got a pay rise because he actually was all right in the Premier League. He actually had some moments where he looked a handful.
Yeah.
And I think he was a good foil for Delap. Obviously, the focus was on Delap so much so that when Hirst came in, maybe sides relaxed a bit or whatever. But I think he's been so underwhelming. I really like I agree with you with the hold-up play. I'm just like, I can't quite believe now an international striker can't control the ball. He loses the ball so much. Moves break down with him so much. And people complain about the kind of, flow of the attack and everything else. Well, when you've got a target man that can't hold the ball up, and he literally can't at the moment. There'll be a couple of times where it sort of like bounces off him and he gets lucky, and his pace keeps us in possession or whatever, and he drops it off to Philogene or Eggerly or something like that. But I just think he's been so off it all season. Really, there's been a couple of games where he's played quite well. And look, we're not just here to slag people off, but I think it's trying to work out why there's no flow to the team, why there's no connection and stuff. And it just feels like he's not doing his job really. And I'm not sure if any of the strikers really are. Forget the goals, just holding the play up, keeping the move going, dragging defenders out of position, all the rest of it. It's just not really working. So, people are talking about January and stuff already. Are we going to be looking at more players? A striker looks like the position, doesn't it? It's like if we have these three for the rest of the season, are we really confident that that's enough to get there? I don't know.
No, I think it is starting to become a position which we may have to improve upon in January, or no, well, you'd like to think you can improve upon it, but I think it is something we have to go in the market for. If December, as you said, we had a really good run in 6 games against sides we should have got a result against. Oxford, I think, would have been one as well. But as you said, coming up, Coventry, Stoke, we've got Wednesday or one of the Sheffields in between that as well. But then Millwall are having a fantastic season. It's a tough month, and Christmas period is always tough because games come thick and fast. But on paper, this is a tough schedule regardless. So if things don't improve in that regard, I think it's even more likely that that position is going to look to get bolstered from both in and out of the club. But it's such a shame. It's such a shame because George Hirst is one of the few players remaining from a team we all of us still look back on so fondly and talk about a lot, because this team haven't done anything yet to overshadow them. Even if they're having a great season, we'd still look back at the previous season more fondly because they've gone on to achieve something. Maybe this team will. It's still only November, but
I don't think we should write him off. But I just think if we're relying on him at the moment to be the guy, the signs don't look great. Maybe a bench role, don't know, but it feels like a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, very much so. Looking a bit more, speaking as the results, it's hard to have much of a positive spin after a loss, isn't it? But results didn't really go away as well. Obviously, me and Rob said on Wednesday's show after the whole game, playing on a Friday night, it's a good chance to sort of lay down a marker, and we would have gone second if we won that game. Sort of have everyone below going, oh god, they've gone above us overnight, and watch out, they're even more on the up as they have been in recent weeks. But I think, with the exception of Stoke City, who lost to Hull as well, ironically, every team above us won this weekend. Cov obviously won. They seem to just be churning out wins. They had a tough game, of course. I think it wasn't a breeze as many of their games have been this season. But yeah, from 4th to potentially going to 2nd, now back into 8th. Obviously, tomorrow night at Blackburn. And then that's our game in hand sorted. And then who knows how we do against Coventry. Things could look very different. I think that's going to be the case this season, where you're not going to be consistently in one spot the whole time. But it's a shame to see yourself out of playoff spots after just getting back in there after a slow start to the season.
I mean, yeah, but it's the same situation, isn't it, really? Leicester Leicester in 16th are 3 points behind us. Like, it's so tight. It's so tight. Yes, it's a bit of a false economy. Even if we'd have won that game, you're still not that far away from that position. All I would say is, Coventry winning again. We're now 16 points, I think, behind Coventry.
Yeah,
that's sort of becoming insurmountable, pretty much. If we lose to them, I think it definitely is. So, like we said a couple of weeks ago, you're probably playing for second place, really. But that is well within our reach. We're 6 points behind. If you win the Blackburn game, you're 3 points off it. So the position, that doesn't necessarily bother me.
Yeah,
it's more the performances. Just like there's no. I know we were on that 6-game run, but it didn't feel solid. It didn't feel. I don't know. It's such a stuttering season. And you're waiting for it to click into gear, and the longer it goes on, you ask yourself, is it basically going to click into gear?
Is it unbeaten 6-game run where you get 4 wins out of 6, and 2 games where we should have potentially won with Wrexham and Watford? Not a good run. Obviously, we're not going to go 6 games unbeaten every game, but if we get over a 7-game span, we'd only lose 1. I'd like to fancy our chances.
It definitely is. And look, I haven't seen all of those games, like all the 90 minutes of those games, but from what I have seen of a lot of the sides this season, the Championship just isn't that strong. It's just not that strong. So if we're not able to kind of impose ourselves on some of these teams, that is a bit of an indictment on some of the recruitment and everything else. And look, teams have great days. Charlton played really, really well and deserved to kick our ass when they beat us 3-0 at home and stuff like that. But I just feel we're kind of teams know how to get at us, and it's still working. Those fairly basic ways of getting at us is still working pretty effectively, and obviously Oxford is the latest example of it.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, you've got Blackburn tomorrow night. Obviously, this game was supposed to be done and dusted. When was it? Early on in the season, was it like
It's pretty
October?
early on, I think. Yeah,
September, October. I mean, me and you did a podcast looking back on the game, but didn't happen. That was a bit of a Twilight Zone sort of. Well, where are we? Kind of.
and we would have
podcast.
lost that game. We would have
Yeah,
lost that game.
yeah. Well, that's the thing going into this one now. Obviously, with it rectified, I think we've had this game kind of hanging overhead for a month and a half or so. It'd be good to get out of the way, but I don't know, I'm looking forward to it. There's a few, obviously, with the way it ended, there's a bit of backbitiness from both sets of fans. I think players going to us. Obviously, Cantwell was very much not happy. We weren't fans of his anyway, but obviously with his Norwich allegiances then, and obviously Blackburn fans wanting the win, considering how close it was to the end. We could come in and completely spoil that and get away with all 3 points. It's an interesting game, and it's a key one now, isn't it? Especially after this Oxford result.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they all are. Have we got Coventry next week?
Yeah, after this game, yeah.
After Blackburn, yeah. So it is quite big. I think because of that, really, more than anything. If you can win the game and go into the Coventry game with, back in the playoffs, and then pushing on to try and get a little bit closer to them, that will be big. I think it's more the mood, though. Honestly, if we lose, we'll be back in that Charlton mode again with the fan base and stuff.
Blackburn's only they've only won one home game this season. They've only drawn one and they've lost the rest.
So really? Wow.
The home form is atrocious. Obviously, they nearly beat us. They only beat Southampton at home, so maybe it's new relegated sides there. They seem to have the secret sauce against. It's a weird one.
If they're remotely smart, they'll just lump it over the top and wait for one of our defenders to make a mistake.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm actually going to be at the game tomorrow night, so I'll try and do a voice note, and as you guys have done. Also, if history of Tractor Noise dictates itself, any time one of us have gone to a game this season, if you have a tinfoil hat on, we've won. So
there you go.
Maybe we have a secret source to the result. Who knows? But that's going to do it for today's show. We'll be back on Wednesday, a recap of Town's game against Blackburn, and we'll be back the following week, as said, for Town's first game of the hectic festive period against Coventry, which is a massive game. Obviously, they are flying, but it's going to be a big game nonetheless, and we're very, very looking forward to that. Luke Wolfen's return to Port Road and many other stories to come out of that game. But, we'll see you Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of the week.